So as has become the tradition with TLC and the Outstanding Tutor Award, I would like to present Kris with a clock, which represents the amount of time that she devotes to adult learners and to adult literacy. And also, before I turn over the mic, because I'm not going to come back up here, I have a certificate for Kris. And I would also like to present this check for $250. One goes to the nominator, Rachel, who is representing the Literacy Council of Southwestern Pennsylvania. And the other one will go directly to Kris. And if you have it over there.
Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly because wait till you hear Kris, she'll blow you away. But I just want to tell you a little bit about Kris and how I got to know her. And as Kim mentioned, Kris has done service her entire life. She spent 28 years serving our country in the U.S. Army. She's a retired colonel in the Army. She has 3 master's degrees. And she's worked as a volunteer through her whole life. She's come recently in the past 5 years to literacy, but she's volunteered for lots of different organizations, including domestic violence, up until just recently. She started 5 years ago with the Southwestern Pennsylvania Literacy Council as an ESL tutor. And 3 years ago, I met her when she came to us and wanted to form a partnership with IU1. So I've worked with Kris for the past 3 years in both our partnership, and I also now sit on the board for the Literacy Council. When you hear the word volunteer, and I looked it up in the dictionary, and it is a person who performs a service willingly and without pay. Well, Kris is that definition. She has spent the past 5 years donating over 6,000 hours to the Literacy Council. She spends 30 to 40 hours a week serving as the board president, the director of programs, the tutor trainer. She is a volunteer instructor for our program teaching ESL. She also teaches a small group ESL, and she works with one student one-on-one. As I stated in her nomination, Kris takes on many roles, but her favorite role is working as a teacher. She spends time advocating for her students, getting to know them, and really helping them become self-sufficient. She is the true example of what a teacher is. A wise quote about teaching says, "A good teacher is like a candle. It consumes itself to light the way for others." Kris is the candle for her students and for everyone that she meets. I'm honored to have Kris as part of IU1 as one of our volunteers, but even more honored to know her as a person and a friend. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Kris Drach, Volunteer Tutor of the Year.
Wow, thank you very much. I'm blown away, really, humbled, a little bit overwhelmed, actually. I want to thank TLC for this amazing award and for the work you do, Kim and Colleen and Michelle. You are vital to our success. I also want to thank PAACE, not just for the work you do, but for this amazing conference, my first one, I should say. I also want to thank Intermediate Unit 1, specifically Sue Conradi, Rachel Zilkowski, and Amy Milliken. I don't know if I've ever met 3 more professional experts in the field. When our Literacy Council partnered with them 3 years ago, we were on shaky legs. We had the tutors, and we had the students. What we lacked was gravitas, the credentials, standardization, case management, and technical oversight that IU1 now brings to our efforts on a daily basis. Through our partnership over the past 3 years, the Literacy Council of Southwestern Pennsylvania has become a robust, credible, and thriving center for adult education. This could not have happened without IU1 and these 3 amazing women. There's already been enough said about me, so I really don't want to say anything else about that, but I want to just share 3 really quick stories. I promise I'll be fast. I want to start in 1999, and no, we're not going to work our way forward. I want to share a 1999 story. I was 28 years into my Army career when I was diagnosed with a very bad case of breast cancer. During 18 months of treatment, I was too sick to work, but I needed something worthwhile to do. I was living in Washington, D.C., so I went to the Literacy Council of Northern Virginia and became an ESL tutor. After extensive training, I was paired with Nadia, a young Muslim woman from Egypt whose daughter had been born with one leg. The family moved to the U.S. so their daughter could be treated at Shriners Hospital. Her husband sold hot dogs from a little silver cart on the National Mall near the Lincoln Memorial. Nadia wore a complete head-to-toe burqa and didn't go out much. For 3 years, she waited in a tiny apartment for a tutor. She had to have a woman tutor, and she would only be tutored in certain places. A warm, loving, funny woman, I fell in love with her. Over the next 3 years, we conquered English, grocery stores, restaurants, libraries, school letters from teachers, and doctor office conversations. And we found a used computer, and we mastered English on the internet. I was smitten with this work. I wasn't yet retired, but I knew if I survived the cancer, I was one of the lucky ones who had already found my retirement passion. Fast forward 18 years later to today. I currently teach 3 intermediate advanced English classes at our Literacy Council. But I always tutor an individual one-on-one as well because this is my first love. My student now is a 35-year-old woman from Vietnam named Ha. We have been together for almost 3 years. Ha is married to an American and they live in Bentleyville, a little hamlet in Washington County. This was a shocking change for Ha, who comes from Ho Chi Minh City, the former Saigon. When I first met her, she was shy and very depressed. Her goal was to be able to communicate in complete sentences. She worked 7 days a week studying English, and she learned quickly. After about 6 months, she told me she wanted to learn how to drive a car. In Vietnam, everyone drives scooters. She had barely ever been in a car before she came here. The driver's license took another 6 months while she continued her English studies. On the 3rd try, she passed her test. Her husband got her a nice used car, and Ha said to me, "Kris, I want to get a job in retail." We worked on how to get a job, and in no time, she landed a minimum wage part-time sales position in our outlet mall. After a year of working nights, weekends, and holidays, and winning the company's nationwide top-notch rating for her stockroom management, Ha moved to another retail store and started working for a manager who recognized how very special she is. She has been with this new company now for about 8 months, and they have already given her 2 raises and enrolled her in a management training program. Her boss calls her a selling machine. A few weeks ago, we were studying adverb phrases, and out of nowhere, Ha looked up at me with a big smile and softly said, "Kris, I now make more money than my husband." I admit ESL is my passion, but I have a great understanding of and commitment to the need to arm young men and women with high school diplomas as they face adulthood and life's challenges. I would like to close with a story about Chuck. 50 years ago this month, a 17-year-old kid named Chuck and his childhood sweetheart unfortunately got pregnant. His girlfriend was a year older, so she'd already graduated from high school, but Chuck was still a senior. His mom was an immigrant, and no one in her family had ever graduated from high school. She arranged for Chuck to quit school and get married. She found him an apartment, and he went to work at 2 jobs, pounding fenders in an auto body shop. 3 years later, he had 2 babies in diapers and a wife who was very ill with type 1 diabetes. Chuck realized that pounding fenders was not going to get him anywhere. He decided to get his GED, and he enrolled in a program in Pittsburgh. Their rule was, if you were late 3 times, they kicked you out. It was a long time ago. Chuck didn't control his work hours, and it didn't take long until he was tardy 3 times. They kicked him out. Chuck got disillusioned. He knew he was never going to make it in somebody else's company as a high school dropout. So he started his own business when he was 30 years old. By the time Chuck was 40, he had $1 million company on his hands, and had 2 boys that he put through college. In his early 50s, Chuck became a widower. He sold his business to his son, took his pile of money, and became a hobby farmer, fulfilling a lifelong dream. Today, Chuck has 2 successful sons, a beautiful farm, and 3 granddaughters in college, one of them in a PhD program. By all external measures, Chuck is a very successful man. But I know he lives with sadness and some shame. Deep in his heart, he feels a sense of failure because he does not have a high school diploma. Once in a while, he jokes about it, but he won't talk about how it impacted his life, how it narrowed his choices and stigmatized him in the workplace. Even though he won't talk about it, I know it's true. How do I know? Because Chuck is my husband. Again, I want to thank you so much for this incredible honor. I know how important this is. We have a retired tutor who won this 8 years ago, and we're still talking about it. So we know this is important. This is something I will cherish all my life, and I am very grateful. Thank you.